Welcome back to Mr. Midnight. Tonight, we're heading into the deep mountains of Appalachia with 7 true scary stories from people who saw things they can't explain. These stories come from regular folks, night workers, teachers, security guards, and people just trying to make a living who ran into something strange in these old mountains. Each story is real, told by someone who lived through it and is still trying to make sense of what happened. These aren't made-up tales. They're actual experiences from small towns and lonely places where weird things happen and people don't always talk about them. If you're new here, subscribe to Mr. Midnight for true horror stories that'll make you think twice about what's really out there. Hit the bell so you don't miss our next video. Now let's hear these stories from deep in Appalachia, where the mountains are old, the nights are dark, and some things just don't make sense. My name is Travis Kellum, and I'm 24 years old. I work at the Dollar General on Highway 421 in Harlan County, Kentucky. I dropped out of Eastern Kentucky University last year and moved back home. It's not what I planned for my life, but that's how things go sometimes. I stock shelves, run the register, and try to make enough to keep my car from getting repossessed. I've lived in these mountains my whole life, know every hollow and ridge, every old story people tell about places you shouldn't go. But what happened last October at the Pritchard house showed me that some of those stories aren't just stories. Some of them are warnings. It was a Friday afternoon when Dale texted me. We'd been friends since middle school, and he knew I was always looking for extra money. The message said a demolition crew needed help clearing out the old Pritchard place up on Caudle Mountain. $200 cash for one day's work on Saturday. Just haul out furniture and trash before they knocked the house down. I needed that money bad. My car payment was 3 weeks late, and the bank had already called twice. So I texted back that I was in. Dale said there'd be 3 of us, me, him, and this girl Amber, who'd also signed up. I didn't know Amber, but Dale said she was cool and needed work just as bad as we did. Saturday morning came up cold and gray. I met Dale at the gas station at 7, and we drove together up the winding mountain road. Amber was already there when we pulled up, leaning against an old Chevy, smoking a cigarette. She was maybe 20, wearing work boots and a flannel jacket, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. The foreman was a thin guy named Rick, with a clipboard and a company truck. He didn't waste time with small talk. Pritchard family vanished in 1985, he said, pointing at the house. Place has been empty 40 years. Just get everything out. Furniture, boxes, whatever. Pile it by the road. We'll haul it off Monday, then knock the house down Tuesday. The house sat on a bare patch of ground surrounded by pine trees. 2 stories, white siding gone gray with age, sagging front porch. It looked like 1,000 other old houses in these mountains. But when we got closer, I noticed something weird. All the first-floor windows were boarded up with fresh lumber, new 2x4s with clean saw marks, not rotten old boards like you'd expect. You guys board these windows? I asked Rick. He nodded. Yesterday. Kids keep trying to see inside. That didn't make sense. This place was 5 miles from town up a barely maintained dirt road. No kids came out here. But I didn't say anything. I needed the money. Rick handed us crowbars and left, saying he'd be back around 4 to check our progress and pay us. Dale pried open the front door. The hinges screamed like something dying. The smell hit us first, thick and mineral, like wet clay mixed with something rotten underneath. And then we saw the mud. Every surface inside was covered in dried mud. Not dust, not dirt, mud. Thick gray mud, cracked and buckled like a creek bed after a drought. It covered the floors an inch deep, coated the walls halfway up, caked over every piece of furniture. What the hell? Dale said. Amber stepped inside, looking around with her mouth tight. This don't make sense. This house sits on a hill. Water don't flow uphill. There's never been a flood reach this high. Not my grandma's time. Not in anybody's memory. She was right. The house was a good 50 feet above the nearest creek. We stood there for a minute, just staring. Then Dale shrugged. $200 is $200. Let's get to work. We started hauling furniture out. Everything was heavy with dried mud. Old couches, tables, chairs, all covered in that weird gray crust. My hands got out. filthy almost immediately, the mud leaving a waxy residue that didn't come off easy. I was dragging a chair across the living room when I noticed something in the mud. Little white fragments, mixed throughout like bits of gravel. I knelt down and picked one up. It was a tooth, small, with a tiny root, like from a kid's mouth. "Dale," I said. My voice sounded strange. "Look at this." He came over, took the tooth, and his face went pale. Jesus Christ. We started looking closer at the mud. The white fragments were everywhere, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. All teeth. Amber found a wallet near the front door, stuck in the mud by an old coat rack. She wiped it off and opened it. "Robert Pritchard," she read from the driver's license. "This is the guy who lived here, the one who disappeared with his family." I felt sick. The teeth, the mud, the boarded windows. "We should call someone," I said. "And say what?" Dale shot back. "We found some teeth in mud in a creepy old house? They'll think we're crazy. Besides, we need this money. Let's just finish and get out of here." I didn't want to stay, but he was right about the money, so we kept working. The living room was the worst. All the furniture had been shoved against the walls, leaving the center of the floor empty. And underneath, when we cleared away the mud, we found deep scratches gouged into the wood. Long parallel marks like someone had dragged something heavy across the floor, or like something had clawed its way across. Upstairs was different. The bedrooms were clean, no mud, normal rooms with normal dust, like whatever happened stayed on the first floor. That somehow made it worse. Amber disappeared into the master bedroom. A few minutes later, she came out holding a small notebook. "Found this in the closet," she said, hidden behind some boxes. It was a journal. The name inside said Helen Pritchard, Robert's wife. Amber flipped through the pages. It starts in March 1985. Just normal stuff, grocery lists, notes about the kids' school. But then, she found a page and read aloud. "Knocking sounds from the crawl space. Robert goes down there every night now. Won't tell me what he's doing." She turned more pages. "This one's from April. Robert found where the water comes from. He's keeping it fed, he says. Says it stays below the house as long as we feed it. Says it's always been here." My skin felt cold. "What's the last entry?" Amber's hands were shaking as she found the final page. May 19th, 1985. "He opened it fully tonight. Said we'd be together forever. The mud is rising through the floorboards. I can hear it breathing." Nobody spoke for a long moment. "We're leaving," I said. "Right now. Forget the money." But Dale shook his head. "It's just a crazy diary from 40 years ago. Some woman having a breakdown. There's nothing here but mud and old furniture." He went back downstairs. Amber looked at me, her eyes scared, but we followed him. It was around noon when I heard it. I was alone in the living room, Dale and Amber working in the kitchen. A wet sliding sound came from beneath the floorboards, like something dragging itself through tight spaces. "Dale?" I called out. "Amber?" No answer. I walked toward the kitchen doorway, but it seemed farther away than it should be. The house felt bigger somehow. Wrong. Then I felt cold liquid on my boots. I looked down. Mud was seeping up between the floorboards. Not old dried mud, fresh, wet mud, oozing up like the house was bleeding. "Dale!" I shouted. "Amber!" Still no answer. The mud spread fast, covering the floor, rising toward my ankles. It was ice cold and smelled like minerals and rot. The same smell from when we opened the door, but stronger now, thick enough to choke on. I ran for the front door. It wouldn't open. I yanked the handle, threw my shoulder against it, but it was stuck, or locked, or held. The mud reached my knees. It was thick, grabbing at me, pulling me down. I could barely move. I pounded. On the boarded window. Through the gaps in the boards, I saw Dale. He was standing right outside, maybe 10 feet away, looking at the house. "Dale!" I screamed. "Help me!" He couldn't hear. Me. He was looking right at the window, right at where I was standing, but his eyes went through me like I wasn't there. The mud reached my waist, my chest. It was pulling me down with impossible strength. Amber appeared beside me suddenly. She was inside too, also covered in mud, also screaming. Her mouth was open wide, but no sound came out. Dale kept standing outside, completely unaware. Something grabbed my leg underwater, a hand. Human-shaped but wrong, too cold, fingers too strong. It pulled hard and I went under. Mud filled my mouth, my nose. I couldn't breathe, couldn't see. I tried to fight toward the surface but didn't know which way was up anymore. Then my eyes opened underwater. Below me, the floor had opened. The crawl space hatch was gone, replaced by a black hole that dropped into nothing. And around that hole, circling it like a slow drain, were bodies. The Pritchard family. I recognized Robert from his driver's license photo, even though his skin was gray and waterlogged. A woman, Helen probably. 2 kids, maybe 8 and 10 years old. And others, dozens of others. All pale, all moving in that slow circle, all being pulled toward the hole. I kicked, fought, tried to swim. My lungs were burning, dying. My hand broke through something hard. The window. I was touching the window glass from inside. Everything lurched. Suddenly I was on my hands and knees on dry floor, coughing, vomiting mud. Amber was beside me doing the same, both of us soaking wet and covered in gray slime. Dale was standing in the doorway, staring at us confused. "Y'all all right? You just froze up for a minute there, standing completely still." I looked at my phone. 3 minutes had passed. 3 minutes. But I'd been drowning for at least 20. "We're done," I said, my voice raw. "We're leaving." Amber and I stumbled outside. The foreman showed up an hour later, took one look at us, overed in mud, handed over our money, and left fast without asking questions. He seemed like he wanted to forget he'd ever hired us. That night I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I got in my car and drove back to the Pritchard house. I had to know, had to understand. I brought a crowbar and a flashlight. Inside, I tore up the floorboards in the living room until I found it, a wooden hatch with a rusted padlock. I broke the lock, opened the hatch. Below was a sinkhole. 20 feet down, I could see black water moving in a slow spiral, and on the surface, something white, a hand reaching up toward the opening. I slammed the hatch shut and nailed it down with boards, then pushed furniture over it. My hands shook so bad I kept dropping the hammer. Monday morning, I called the sheriff, told them about a dangerous sinkhole at the Pritchard property. 2 deputies came out. Then the state environmental department with ground-penetrating radar. They found a cavity beneath the house connecting to an underground river system, and in the water, they found remains. Over 2 weeks, they pulled out 14 bodies, missing persons cases dating back to 1952. But they never found the Pritchard family themselves. The house was demolished. The sinkhole was sealed with concrete. The county covered it with dirt and left it. No fence, no warning sign, just empty ground. 6 months later, I saw 2 missing person posters at the gas station, recent disappearances, and I recognized their faces. I'd seen them in the mud, circling the drain. Amber called me last week. She's been having dreams where she's drowning and can't wake up. Asked if I have them too. I lied and said no, but I do. Every single night I drown in mud, and every night I feel those hands pulling me down towards something that was there before the Pritchards, before the house, before anyone ever built on that land. I looked up them. E-property records. 4 different houses have been built on that spot since 1834. People vanished from every single one. The land stays empty now, just a depression in the ground where grass won't grow. After heavy rain, I sometimes drive past. The depression fills with muddy water, and the water moves in a slow spiral. I keep a packed bag in my car, ready to leave Kentucky forever. But I know it won't matter, because every night when I close my eyes, I'm already back in that house, already sinking through the floor into mud that remembers everyone who ever tried to live above it. Mud that keeps rising through the floorboards of my dreams. looking for new faces to add to the spiral, new bodies to pull down into the breathing darkness where the water comes from, where it's always been, where it's still waiting. My name is Malik Henderson, and I've been working as a landscaper for 13 years now. Started in Charlotte doing commercial properties, office parks, shopping centers, the kind of places where you're basically invisible to the people walking past you. 2 years ago, I moved out here to Western North Carolina, trying to get away from my ex-wife, the noise, the whole mess my life had become. Took a job with a small crew doing residential work in the mountains. The pay's worse, but at least I can breathe out here. At least I thought I could. What happened last September in Pisgah National Forest changed everything I thought I understood about these mountains. Changed me in ways I'm still trying to accept. I'm 31 now. Lost my marriage, most of my savings in the divorce, been rebuilding ever since. The landscaping work is steady enough, mowing lawns, trimming hedges, planting seasonal flowers for retirees who moved here for the views. But it's September to November that gets lean. Grass stops growing as much. People don't want new plantings before winter. I was 2 months behind on rent, looking at my bank account every morning feeling that familiar panic creeping back in. That's when Devin brought up sang hunting. Devin was the other guy on our crew, born and raised in these mountains, family going back generations. He was maybe 25, still lived with his mom, knew every trail and back road within 50 miles. We'd been working together all summer, and he was always talking about the mountains like they were alive, like they had rules you had to follow. "Ginseng, man," he said one afternoon while we were loading equipment. "Wild ginseng, sang we call it. September through November is legal harvest season. You know where to look, you can make serious money." I'd heard about it. Rich people in China paying crazy amounts for wild American ginseng root. Some end of medicine thing supposed to be better than the farm-grown stuff. "How much money?" I asked. $900 a pound, dried. If you got good roots, old ones could be more." He grinned. "I know a spot. Family spot my papa showed me when I was a kid. We go this weekend, split everything 50-50. You could make enough for 2-3 months rent easy." I should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why he needed a partner if he knew such a good spot. But $900 a pound kept echoing in my head, and I heard myself saying yes. We left before dawn that Saturday. Devin driving his beat-up Ford up Forest Service roads until we couldn't go any further. Then we started hiking. He had a GPS unit clipped to his pack, the old kind with the rubber antenna. I had my phone, but service disappeared about 10 minutes in. "Sang grows in the shade," Devin explained as we climbed. "North-facing slopes near creeks and streams. You're looking for plants with 4 or 5 prongs. That's the leaves. Older the plant, more prongs it has. The really old ones, 50 years or more, that's where the money is." The forest was thick. Hardwoods mostly, oak, hickory, poplar. Rhododendron and mountain laurel so dense in places we had to push through sideways. It was beautiful up there. Quiet except for birds and the sound of our boots on leaves. By noon, we'd found maybe a dozen plants. Devin showed me how to dig them up carefully with this Japanese gardening knife called a hori-hori. You have to get the whole root or it's worthless. And you're supposed to plant the red berries back in the hole, help them reseed. "Gotta be respectful," Devin said. "Can't just take everything." But the plants we found were small, young. Devin kept checking his GPS, frowning. "We're close, real close, just over this next ridge." "Is it legal?" I asked. "Having a family spot on federal lay?" He didn't answer right away, just kept walking. "My papa showed me when I was 8 years old," he finally said. Said his daddy showed him. Said there are places in these mountains that don't belong to the government, don't care about their maps and boundaries. The land remembers who respects it. That should have been a warning, but I was already calculating what my half would be worth, already imagining paying off rent, getting ahead for once. We pushed through a wall of laurel, branches scraping our arms and faces. And then we were standing in a hollow I can still see perfectly when I close my eyes. It was small. maybe 100 feet across. The trees were huge, old growth that somehow got missed by all the logging that happened up here a century ago. And the ginseng was everywhere. Not just a few plants, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. 4-prongers, 5-prongers, plants that had to be ancient. Holy shit, Devin whispered. It's better than I remembered. His GPS screen was spinning, just spinning in circles. Couldn't lock on any satellites. Mine was the same. No signal, no location, just that little blue dot drifting across a blank screen. Doesn't matter, Devin said, already pulling out his digging knife. We'll make thousands. Come on. I knelt next to the first big plant and started digging. The soil was soft, rich, darker than the ground outside the hollow. The root went down deep. I had to dig carefully, following it down maybe 8 inches before I could work it free. When I finally pulled it out, I stopped moving. The root looked like a person. Not kind of like a person. Like a person. A tiny human body with a head, 2 arms, 2 legs, all perfectly formed. Even little fingers and toes branching off the main root. Devin, I said. My voice sounded strange. Look at this. He came over, saw the root, and laughed. Actually laughed. That's man root, he said. That's what the old-timers call it. Happens sometimes with really old sang. The Chinese buyers love that shit. Paid double for roots shaped like people. You just found us a bonus. Beatus. Rather. He went back to digging. I stared at the root in my hand. It looked like it was screaming. We filled both our backpacks. 15 plants at least, maybe 20. I stopped counting after a while, just kept digging, kept telling myself this was normal, this was just valuable plants, nothing weird about plants. Each root we pulled up looked more human than the last. Time to go, Devin said finally. The sun was getting low, orange light slanting through the trees. We got enough. More than enough. We headed back the way we came. At least I thought it was the way we came. 10 minutes later, we were standing next to a split boulder. A big rock cracked down the middle like something had hit it with a giant axe. We passed this already, I said. No, we didn't. I remember it. We're going in circles. Devin pulled out his GPS. The screen was still spinning. He turned it off, turned it back on. Nothing changed. Sun's setting wrong, he said quietly. What? Look. He pointed. The sun was dropping toward the horizon way too fast, like someone was running a time lapse. Shadows stretched and moved while we watched. We need to find the trail, I said. My heart was hammering. Now. We walked faster, almost running, and 5 minutes later, we were back at the split boulder. Okay, Devin said. His voice was shaking. Okay, we'll camp here. Wait for morning. Everything will make sense in daylight. I didn't argue. I started gathering wood for a fire, trying to ignore the way the hollow felt like it was getting smaller, the trees leaning in closer. Devin grabbed my arm. You hear that? Singing. A woman's voice, high and lonesome, like the old mountain songs they play at festivals. But it was coming from everywhere at once, different directions, echoing. And the words weren't English. Then I saw the lights, green lights. Soft glowing green like foxfire on rotten logs, moving. Flowing along the ground in streams, all of them heading toward us. The light got brighter and I could see shapes moving between the trees. People, crawling on their hands and knees, naked and covered in dirt. There were 7 of them, 3 women, 2 men, 2 children. Moving fast, too fast, coordinated like a wolf pack. When the light hit their faces, their eyes reflected green, like animals, like deer caught in headlights. Jesus Christ, Devin whispered. He dropped his backpack and ran. I ran after him, crashing through branches, my headlamp beam bouncing wildly. Behind us I heard clicking sounds, fingernails on rock, getting closer. My boot caught on something and I went down hard. My hand landed on what felt like a branch, but when my light hit it, I saw the truth. A human femur. Brown with age. There were bones everywhere, skulls grinning up from under leaves, ribs and vertebrae scattered like someone had dumped a bucket of bones and let the forest swallow them. The clicking sounds were right behind me. I scrambled up and ran, found Devon pushing into a thick stand of mountain laurel. We forced ourselves into the center, branches grabbing at our clothes and skin. We huddled there, trying not to breathe loud, trying not to move. They circled us. I could see them through gaps in the branches. Their faces were human but wrong, stretched, mouths hanging open showing too many teeth. Teeth that had been filed to points. A child's voice spoke, clear English. A little boy, maybe 7 years old. Diggers took the sang, diggers gotta plant it back. That's the law, that's always been the law. The others started chanting. Plant with blood, plant deep, plant proper, or diggers stay here. Diggers become watchers too. Two of them pushed into the laurel from one side. Devon panicked, burst out the other side screaming. I had no choice. I followed. We ran toward a clearing ahead, lungs burning, legs weak. We reached it gasping. The split boulder, again. They surrounded us completely, a circle of crawling figures with green glowing eyes, moving close. I tore off my backpack and dumped it. Ginseng roots spilled across the ground. Here, I shouted. Take them, we're leaving them. They kept coming. Devon grabbed roots and started shoving them back into the soil. His hands were shaking so bad he could barely hold them. Plant proper, the child voice said. Plant deep, plant with blood for the mountain to keep. I understood. I pulled out my hori-hori knife and dragged it across my palm. Blood welled up hot and dark. I let it drip onto the first root, then pushed the root deep into the soil. Devon did the same. Both of us bleeding into the earth, planting back every single root we'd taken. 15 plants. 20. I lost count. My hand was screaming, but I kept going. When the last root went in the ground, the child spoke again. Payment good, diggers can go, but diggers never tell where the sang garden grows. They crawled backward into darkness. The green light faded. Normal night sounds came back slowly. Crickets, an owl, wind in the leaves. At first light, we found ourselves 30 yards from where we'd entered the hollow. We hiked out in 15 minutes. We didn't talk in the truck, not for an hour. Then Devon said quietly, My papa told me stories about sang guardians, people who got greedy. Now they're bound to protect it forever. My hand got infected within 3 days. Red streaks running up my arm despite cleaning it, despite antibiotic ointment. The ER doctor kept asking what I cut myself on because it looked like I'd touched something toxic. I have nightmares. Every night, I'm crawling through that hollow on my hands and knees. My teeth are sharp, filed to points. I'm waiting for the next diggers to come. Devon quit the landscaping company, moved to Tennessee. When I tried texting him, the number was disconnected. I researched online, found old Cherokee legends about sacred plant gardens where the Spiten writs demanded blood payment from anyone who harvested without permission, found stories from the 1800s about ginseng hunters who went into certain hollows and never came out. People who saw them later said they weren't right anymore. 6 months passed. I avoided the mountains, worked in town, but business got slow again. Bills piled up. I found myself driving toward Pisgah. Just to look, I told myself, just to see. The hollow was easy to find, like it wanted to be found. The plants we'd replanted were enormous, impossibly large for 6 months' growth. 8-prongers, 9-prongers, worth thousands. I heard the singing again. That high, lonesome voice. Green lights glowed between the trees. A child's voice called out, Digger came back? Digger gets to stay now? Digger gets to watch the garden grow? I tried to run, but my feet wouldn't move right, like roots growing from my boot soles into the soil. My teeth started aching. I felt them shifting in my jaw, sharpening. The green light surrounded me. My last coherent thought was wondering how long it takes to forget how to walk upright. How long before I'm crawling through these woods on all fours with dirt under my fingernails and green light in my eyes? waiting patient and hungry for the next person who needs money bad enough to ignore the warnings, who convinces themselves that old stories are just superstition and that sang worth $900 a pound is worth any risk. I want to scream a warning, but my mouth doesn't form words anymore, just makes clicking sounds with teeth that are too sharp now. Too many. I crawl toward my position among the other 6 guardians, the 7 watchers who keep the Sang Gardens safe in the hollow that doesn't appear on any map, in the mountains that remember every broken promise, every drop of blood spilled on their soil, every person who took what wasn't freely given and learned too late that in Appalachia, the land always collects its debts. My name is Diane Marshall, and I've been teaching 8th grade English at Grayson County Middle School for 17 years. I grew up in these mountains of southwestern Virginia, left for college, came back to teach. I know every family in town, watched half my students' parents go through my classroom when they were kids. I thought I knew everything about this place, the gossip, the history, the way small towns hold on to their secrets. But last fall, 6 months after my divorce from Robert became final, I learned that some traditions in these mountains go deeper than I ever imagined. Some things we pass down aren't just recipes or stories. Some things we pass down have teeth. The divorce hit me harder than I expected. 26 years of marriage, gone. The house felt too big, too quiet. I'd stand in the kitchen making dinner for one and just start crying for no reason. My neighbor Linda noticed. She's lived next door for 12 years. Always friendly, always bringing over banana bread. One Saturday morning in October, she knocked on my door with coffee and an invitation. "There's a quilting circle at the community center," she said. "Thursday evenings, 7 o'clock. Just a group of ladies, nothing fancy. You should come." I hadn't quilted since high school, helping my mother with small projects. But I was so lonely, I would have agreed to anything. "Okay," I said. "I'll try it." That Thursday, I drove to the old community center on Mountain View Road. It's a plain brick building built in the 1950s with harsh fluorescent lights and that smell of old coffee and pine cleaner that all community centers have. The main room had one long table in the center, and around it sat 6 women, all older than me, probably in their 60s and 70s. "Diane," Linda waved me over. "Ladies, this is my neighbor I told you about." They welcomed me like I was family. There was Geneva, and the oldest at maybe 85 with white hair and a tight bun. There was Margaret and Sue, sisters who looked identical. There was Carol, Betty, and a quiet woman named Ruth, who barely spoke. They made space for me at the table, handed me a needle and thread, showed me where to work. The quilt stretched across the entire table, maybe 12 feet on each side. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Hundreds of different fabrics, florals, solids, plaids, lace, all stitched together in this pattern that looked like a family tree with branches spreading everywhere. Some pieces were obviously old, the fabric thin and faded. Others looked newer. "We're making a memory quilt," Geneva explained, her voice soft and kind. "Each piece of fabric comes from something important. Wedding dresses, baby clothes, shirts from men who went to war. We've been working on it for years." "How long?" I asked. Geneva smiled. "Oh, quite a while. The ladies before us started it. We're just continuing their work." She gave me the border section to stitch. Simple work, just straight lines. My hands remembered the rhythm. Needle down, pull through, needle down, pull through. It was calming. After months of crying and rage and emptiness, it felt good to just make something. While we sewed, the women talked about their families. Normal stuff at first, grandchildren, recipes, who needed prayers at church. But then I noticed something strange. Geneva mentioned her husband Carl bringing her roses this morning. But earlier, Linda had whispered to me that Carl died in 1994. That was 28 years ago. Margaret talked about her son James helping her fix the porch, but I knew James had died in Vietnam. I'd seen his name on the memorial in town square. They talked about dead people like they were still alive. I thought maybe it was just old age, confusion. I kept sewing. After an hour, my yes got tired from the clothes work. I leaned back to rest them, and that's when I saw it. In the pattern of the quilt, where different fabrics met and overlapped, there were faces, not stitched deliberately, just appearing naturally in how a blue floral print connected to cream lace, how a red plaid lined up with white cotton. Human faces, dozens of them, staring up from the cloth. I said, "Does anyone else see faces in the pattern?" The women looked up from their work and smiled. "Well, of course, dear," Geneva said gently. "Everyone's in there. All our people. That's the whole point." I looked closer, and then I saw her. My mother. Her face, clear as a photograph, made from the way a piece of blue fabric with tiny flowers connected to cream lace with pearl buttons. I knew those buttons. They'd been on my mother's favorite church blouse, the one she was buried in 3 years ago. My hands started shaking. That's my mom." Geneva patted my hand. "I know, honey. She was one of us. She sat right where you're sitting now, every Thursday for 30 years. But I don't remember her quilting. She started after you left for college," Linda said softly. "She missed you terribly. This helped." My eyes filled with tears. Seeing my mother's face in that quilt, it was like she was there with me. I could almost feel her presence. "How long have you been working on this?" I asked again. Geneva and the others exchanged glances. "The quilt's been going for 115 years, Geneva said. Passed down through the women of this community. We add to it, generation after generation." "It's a memorial?" I asked. "It's more than that, honey." Geneva's voice got quieter. "It's a keeping." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Outside, it had gotten dark. "Every woman who dies," Geneva continued, "we stitch her into the quilt, a piece of her clothing, and her memory stays with us. She never completely goes away." I felt suddenly cold. The room seemed smaller, the walls closer. "I need some air," I said, standing up too fast. My chai bar scraped loud against the linoleum. I went outside to the parking lot. Through the window, I could see the women still sewing. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Their needles were moving in perfect sync. All 6 women, their hands rising and falling at the exact same moment, like they were one person. And the quilt, I swear to God, the quilt was moving, rippling like water, even though there was no wind. I stood there shaking, watching them through the window. Then I forced myself to go back inside. "What is this really?" I asked. My voice came out harder than I meant. "What does this quilt actually do?" The women looked at each other. Finally, Geneva spoke. "It keeps our people close," she said. "Keeps the community bound together across time. Would you like to understand properly?" Before I could answer, Geneva reached over and took my hand. She placed it flat on the quilt's surface. The fabric was warm. Not just warm. It had a pulse, like a heartbeat thumping against my palm. Then the visions hit. I saw a wedding in 1923, a bride in a white dress standing in a church I recognized but looked different, younger. I saw a woman giving birth in a farmhouse bedroom, screaming while 3 other women helped her. I saw men in old military uniforms, waving goodbye from a train platform. I saw funerals, dozens of funerals, bodies lowered into mountain earth while women in black stood crying. And I saw my mother, 20 years old, sitting at this exact table in this exact room, sewing this exact quilt. She was pregnant with me. Her hands moved over the fabric, and she was smiling. The vision stopped. I jerked my hand back, gasping. "Now you understand," Geneva said. "Every woman in our families has added to it. Your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother. Now you." "What happens if someone stops?" I asked. "What if you just let it go?" The row went completely silent. Even the fluorescent lights stopped buzzing. Linda's voice was barely a whisper. "We tried that once, in 1974. 17 people died in 6 months." My blood went cold. "The quilt needs to be continued," Geneva said. "Needs to be fed with new fabric, new memories. In return, it protects the community. Small mercies, preventing the worst tragedies, keeping everyone connected." "I don't want any part of this," I said, grabbing my coat. "I'm leaving." I turned to go, and my coat pocket caught on something. I looked down. My needle was still in my hand, thread trailing behind me. I'd stitched 6 inches of border without even realizing it. My thread was woven into the pattern now, tight and permanent. "You touched it with bare skin," Geneva said gently. "You felt the keeping. You're connected now, Diane. Just like your mother was. Just like all of us." I ran to my car, shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. For the next week, I tried to forget, but I couldn't stop thinking about the quilt. My fingers itched constantly, like they needed to sew. At school, I'd catch myself making stitching motions with my hands while teaching. At night, I dreamed about fabric and thread, and my mother's face smiling up from blue flowers and cream lace. Thursday evening came. I told myself I wouldn't go back. At 6:45, I was sitting on my couch watching TV, determined to stay home. At 7 p.m., I found myself in my car, driving to the community center. I didn't decide to do it. My body just went, like I was on autopilot. The women greeted me warmly when I walked in. I sat at the table, picked up my needle, started sewing, and it felt right. It felt necessary. Like scratching an itch I'd had my whole life without knowing it. Months passed. I went every Thursday, never missing a session. I started bringing fabric, a piece of my wedding dress, my mother's favorite scarf, a baby blanket from when I was born. The women helped me work them into the pattern, near where my mother's pieces were. I swear I could see her face smiling in the cloth. One Thursday in February, Geneva didn't come. She passed peacefully last night, Linda told us. 89 years old, went to sleep and didn't wake up. The next week, Linda brought a cardboard box filled with Geneva's clothes. We cut them into pieces and worked them into the quilt. And as we sewed, Geneva's face appeared in the pattern, clear and smiling, right next to where her husband Carl had been for 28 years. That night, I woke up at 3 a.m. from a terrible dream. In the dream, the quilt had grown to cover the entire mountain. Every family in town was stitched into it, thousands of faces staring up from the fabric. And then, all at once, the quilt was finished, complete. And all the dead people woke up simultaneously. They were trapped inside the fabric, screaming, trying to claw their way out. The protection the quilt provided wasn't protection at all. It was their desperate attempts to be free, stopping tragedies so more people wouldn't be added to the quilt because there wasn't room for anyone else. I sat up in bed, sweating, understanding hitting me like a punch. The quilt wasn't preserving the dead. It was trapping them. And I was helping. At the next Thursday meeting, I tried to tell the others. "Don't you see?" I said. "We're trapping them. They're not at peace. They're stuck." But the women couldn't hear me. Or wouldn't. Their needles kept moving, all in perfect sync, and they smiled at me like I was confused. I decided to end it. The following Tuesday night, I broke into the community center. I had a gas can from my garage and a box of matches from my kitchen drawer. The quilt lay on the table, huge and beautiful and terrible. I poured gasoline over every inch of it. The fabric soaked it up like it was thirsty. I struck a match. The quilt caught fire immediately, flames spreading fast across the fabric. Through the fire, I could see the fasces, as in the pattern. They looked like they were moving, writhing, screaming silently in the flames. The smoke detector started screaming. I ran outside and watched through the window as the entire quilt burned. The flames were so bright they hurt my eyes. When it was done, there was nothing left but ash. I drove home and slept better than I had in months. I felt free. But when I woke up the next morning, my bedroom was wrong. The walls were covered in fabric, the same fabric from the quilt. Blue florals, cream lace, red plaid, white cotton. It covered every wall, the ceiling, even part of the floor, and stitched into the center, right above my bed, was a new square made from my nightgown, the one I'd been wearing when I burned the quilt. I tore at the fabric, screaming, pulling it down. It ripped away in my hands. Then I ran outside to my car. But when I opened the door, the quilt was there too, covering the seats, the steering wheel, the dashboard, all intact, like it had never burned. I got in anyway and started driving. I don't know where I thought I was going. I just drove faster and faster, not looking at the fabric covering everything around me. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. Linda was sitting next to my bed. "You crashed into a ditch on Route 58, she said quietly. "Severe concussion. You've been in and out of consciousness." I told the doctor everything. About the quilt, the faces, burning it, how it came back. He said I was hallucinating from the head injury, kept me for observation. Linda visited every day. On the third day after the doctor left, she leaned close. "The quilt can't be destroyed," she whispered. "We've all tried at some point. It always comes back. It's not really fabric anymore, Diane. It's memory made solid, and memory can't be burned." "But the faces," I said. "They're trapped." "You tried to free them," Linda said sadly. "But honey, they don't want to be free. They want to be remembered. And now you're part of the remembering." They released me from the hospital that Friday. Thursday evening came. I told myself I wouldn't go to Quilting Circle. But at 6:55 p.m. I was putting on my coat. At 7 o'clock p.m. I was walking into the community center. The women smiled at me. "Welcome back," they said. I sat down at the table, picked up my needle, started sewing. My hands moved in perfect time with everyone else's. Rise and fall. Rise and fall. All of us stitching together, our needles moving as one. And when I looked down at the quilt, I saw my face. My face, appearing in the pattern, made from the fabric of my nightgown, stitched in next to my mother's pieces. I'm still alive. But I'm already in the quilt. I understand now. This is how it works. You're in the quilt the moment you touch it with bare skin, the moment you feel the keeping. Death just means your body finally lets go. But you're still here, still stitching in this room every Thursday evening with all the other women who tried to leave and couldn't, who tried to burn it and watched it come back, who learned too late that memory is stronger than fire. I'll teach English for another 20 years, probably. Maybe 30. Every Thursday night I'll come to this room and sew. We'll add new women. We'll stitch in the dead. We'll keep everyone together in fabric that can't be destroyed because it's not made of cloth anymore. It's made of something stronger, something that lives in these mountains where memory and obligation are the same word, where community means surrender, where the pattern continues, thread by thread, into forever. My name is Diane Marshall. I'm 52 years old. I'm a middle school English teacher, and I'm already dead. I just don't know when my body will figure it out. My name is Cassie Morgan, and I worked night security at an abandoned strip mine outside Hazard, Kentucky, for exactly 43 nights. I was 22 years old, halfway through my nursing degree at the community college, working double shifts at the truck stop diner on Route 80 to pay tuition. I was tired all the time, falling asleep in anatomy class, living on coffee and gas station energy drinks. When my Uncle Ray offered me a security job riding along on his night shifts for $150 cash per night, I said yes before he even finished explaining what the work involved. "Easy money," he said. "Just sit in the truck, watch for trespassers, keep him company." I could even bring my textbooks and study. It seemed perfect. I had no idea that some jobs pay well because nobody else will do them. I had no idea what my uncle was really guarding up there in those mountains. The Black Rock Mining Company went bankrupt in 2018 and just walked away from everything. They left rusting dump trucks the size of houses, buildings with the windows broken out, and a pit carved 300 feet straight down into the mountain. The pit was massive. You could fit 2 football fields at the bottom. The state made them put up a chain link fence and some warning signs. But that was it. The mine company hired Ray through some contractor to make sure nobody stole equipment or dumped trash on the property. He'd been doing it for 6 years when he brought me on. My first night was a Friday in June. Ray picked me up at 11 p.m. in his Ford pickup, an old 2005 model with 200,000 miles on it, AM/FM radio, and a police scanner he kept running all shift. He had a 12-gauge shotgun in a rack behind the seats and a thermos of coffee that smelled like it had been sitting in that truck for days. Ray was 46, my mom's older brother, the only family I had left after she died from cancer the year before. He'd paid for her funeral. I owed him everything. The mine site was 15 miles up a dirt access road that snaked through the mountains. No streetlights, no houses, nothing but trees and darkness. Ray parked his truck at the front gate, a heavy chain-link barrier with a padlock the size of my fist. From there we could see the whole site, the old equipment lot, the collapsed administration building, and way in the back, the pit. Even from the gate I could see the edge where the ground just dropped away into nothing. "Rules are simple," Ray said, pulling out a Louis L'Amour Western and a flashlight. "Stay in the truck. Don't walk around at night. Especially don't go near the pit. And if anyone comes through that gate, you let me handle it. You just sit quiet and study your books." "Why can't I go near the pit?" I asked. Ray didn't look up from his book. "Bad things in the water down there. Chemical runoff from the mining. You fall in, you ain't coming back out. Water's too toxic. Visibility's 0. You'd just sink to the bottom and that's where you'd stay." I looked at the pit again, at that massive darkness at the back of the property. "Is there a lot of water in it?" "Enough," Ray said. 200 feet deep in some places, fills up from groundwater and rain. Now open your anatomy book and let me read in peace." The first week was boring. We'd arrive at 11, sit in the truck until 6 a.m., then Ray would drive me home. Nobody ever came to the gate. I studied for my exams. Ray read his westerns. Sometimes we'd see deer in the headlights or hear coyotes in the distance. The radio scanner crackled with state police calls from the highway, but nothing ever happened at the mine. I started to relax, started to think this was the easiest money I'd ever make. Friday night of the second week, everything changed. It was 1 in the morning. I was reviewing the circulatory system. Ray was on his 3rd Louis L'Amour book of the shift, and then I saw headlights coming up the access road. A pickup truck, moving slow, no hurry. Ray set his book down and grabbed the shotgun. "Stay put. No matter what you see, you stay in this truck and you keep your mouth shut. Understand?" I nodded, but my stomach was already tight. The way he said it, like he knew who was coming, like this had happened before. The truck stopped at the gate. An older man got out, maybe 60, with a limp. He went to his truck bed and started pulling something out. Something heavy, wrapped in a blue plastic tarp. He dragged it onto the ground and I saw the shape. Human-sized, unmistakable. Ray walked to the gate with the shotgun over his shoulder, casual, like he was meeting a neighbor. They talked in voices too quiet for me to hear. Then Ray took out a key, unlocked the gate, and swung it open. The man dragged the tarp back into his truck bed and drove through, heading straight for the pit. I couldn't breathe. I watched through the windshield as the man's truck stopped at the pit's edge, headlights pointing down into that darkness. He got out, unwrapped the tarp, and I saw it clearly. A body. A real human body, dead, limp. The man positioned himself at the edge and pushed, and the body tumbled over and fell and fell and fell until I heard the splash echo across the empty mine site. The man wrapped up the tarp, drove back to the gate, and handed Ray an envelope. Ray counted money inside. I saw him licking his thumb, counting bills. Then the man drove away like nothing had happened, like he'd just dropped off a load of gravel. Ray locked the gate and walked back to the truck. I was crying, shaking, barely able to talk. "We have to call the police. We just watched. We have to." "That wasn't murder disposal," Ray said quietly, starting the truck. "That's waste management. And it's part of the job. Has been for 6 years." "What are you talking about?" I was screaming now. "That was a body! A person!" Ray kept his eyes on the road. "The mine company still pays me. Not for security, for access. They let certain people use the pit for disposal. The water down there is so toxic, so full of chemicals, nothing survives. Bodies dissolve in a few weeks, no evidence, no problem. I get paid $500 per disposal to unlock the gate and keep my mouth shut. This is insane. This is how I paid for your mama's funeral, Ray said, and his voice went hard. This is how I kept food on her table when she was sick. This is how I survive. And if you want to keep getting paid, you'll keep your mouth shut too. Because if you go to the police, I go to prison, and you lose the only family you got left. I couldn't speak. I was trapped. If I reported this, Ray would be arrested. I'd lose him, and I needed this money. Desperately needed it. Without it, I couldn't finish school, couldn't become a nurse, couldn't escape the diner and the double shifts and the exhaustion that was killing me. So I kept quiet, and I kept working. Over the next month, 4 more people came to dump bodies. Each time, Ray would unlock the gate, take his money, and we'd watch them push the dead into the pit. I learned not to look at the bodies too closely, learned not to ask questions. But the nightmares started, dreams of floating in toxic green water, of bodies with their eyes open, watching me, waiting for me to join them. 3 weeks in, I woke up at 3 a.m. to find Ray gone from the truck. I looked around and saw his flashlight beam down by the pit's edge. He was just standing there, not moving. I got out of the truck, breaking the rules for the first time, and walked down to him. Ray, you okay? He didn't answer. He was staring into the water, completely still. I followed his gaze and my breath stopped. There were lights in the pit. Not reflections from the moon or stars. Lights from under the water, moving slowly, like flashlights, searching the bottom. They're waking up, Ray said in a flat, dead voice. I can count them now. I know all their names. Ray, there's nothing down there. It's just, I need to count them properly. Need to make sure they're all still down there. He started walking toward the edge. I grabbed his arm. No, Ray, come back to the truck. He pulled away from me, strong, focused. I come here every night now. I have to count. Have to make sure they stay. I managed to pull him back, but he fought me the whole way. When we got to the truck, I checked the glove compartment and found a notebook. Ray's handwriting, dates going back 6 years. Every body dumped in that pit, 43 entries total, each one dated and described in detail. But the recent entries were different, delusional. Number 18 surfaced last night, watched me from the water. Number 31 is calling my name in Sarah's voice. They want me to come down and count them face to face. The next morning I confronted him. Ray, you need help. This job is destroying you. He broke down crying, something I'd never seen before. I'm not just security, Cassie. I killed 3 people myself. Bar fights, accidents. I didn't mean to, but they died. And I took this job so I could dump them here, keep watch over them, make sure they stayed buried. But they don't stay buried. Nothing stays buried in that water. That Friday night, a woman arrived with a body in her trunk. Ray met her at the gate but didn't open it. The pit's full, he told her, see? They're coming up, no more. She started yelling, threatening him, saying she'd tell everyone what he really was. Ray fired the shotgun in the air and she drove away screaming. Ray turned to me. Go home, Cassie. I'm going to seal the pit tonight. Going to make things right with them. I'm not leaving you alone. We sat in the truck together. Ray eventually fell asleep, exhausted. I tried to stay awake, but I couldn't. When I woke up at dawn, Ray was gone. His footprints in the dirt led to the pit's edge. Then down, there was an old metal maintenance ladder bolted to 2. He pit wall, and Ray had climbed down it, heading for the water 200 feet below. I ran to the edge and looked down. Ray was halfway down the ladder, still climbing. Ray, come back! They want me to count them proper, he shouted up. Face to face. It's the only way to keep them down. I started down the ladder after him, but the metal was rusted and it broke under my weight. I barely caught myself, hanging on with both hands while my legs swung over nothing. Below me, Ray reached the water level. The surface was glowing, faint green, like foxfire in a swamp. He stood on the last rung, staring down into it. I watched as shapes moved beneath the surface, circling him. Ray was talking to the water, listing names, apologizing over and over. Then a hand came up, pale, bloated, with fingers too long. It touched Ray's boot. He didn't pull away. More hands surfaced, dozens of them, reaching up. Ray looked up at me one last time, and then he stepped off the ladder into the water. He went under without a sound, without struggling, like he wanted to go. The water glowed bright green for 10 seconds. Then it went dark. Ray never came back up. I climbed up shaking and called 911. Emergency crews arrived within an hour. Divers tried to search, but the water was too toxic. Visibility was zero, and they couldn't go deep enough safely. The state environmental department sealed the mine as a hazardous waste site. They started draining the pit for cleanup. I moved to Lexington, started therapy for PTSD, tried to forget, but the nightmares never stopped. 18 months later, I saw a news report. During the drainage, they found 46 bodies at the bottom, not 43 like Ray's notebook said. One was identified as Ray. The other 2 extra bodies were never identified. I did the math late one night. Ray's notebook started 6 years ago, but what if the pit was being used for that? What if the mine company dug into something that was already full of the dead, something that was already glowing, already calling to people with blood on their hands? Sometimes I drive past the sealed mine site at night. The pit is filled with concrete now, supposedly sealed forever. But when my headlights hit that spot, I see water pooled on top of the concrete. And for just a second, it glows green. They didn't seal it. They couldn't seal it. Because whatever lives in that water wasn't created by chemicals. It was already there, waiting in the mountain, waiting for people to dig down and open a door they didn't understand. And it's still waiting now. Still glowing in the dark under all that concrete, still counting bodies, still calling names and voices of people who vanished and were never missed. Sometimes I hear Ray's voice in my dreams, calling from under the water, telling me to come count them with him, telling me everybody comes down eventually. Everybody ends up in the water at the bottom. My name is Marcus Webb, and I worked at Henderson Grain Elevator outside Moorhead, Kentucky for 8 months. I was 19 years old, saving money for community college, and the job was simple enough. Farmers brought corn in from their fields during harvest season. I ran the auger system to unload their trucks, and I kept the facility clean between deliveries. The pay was $9.50 an hour on day shift, $13.25 on nights. I always took the night shift when I could get it. More money, and I could wear my earbuds without Dale, my supervisor, telling me to take them out every 5 minutes. I'd worked plenty of nights alone at that elevator. Never had a problem, never felt scared. But what happened on October 28, 2023, changed everything I thought I knew about those cornfields. Sometimes the worst things aren't hiding in the dark. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight, standing in the corn rows, waiting for the sun to go down. October had been wet that year. Rain every few days, sometimes every day, and the farmers were running behind schedule. Corn needs to dry out before you harvest it, otherwise it molds in storage. So when we finally got a string of clear days at the end of the month, the farmers were bringing loads in around the clock. I'd see the same trucks 2-3 times in one shift. Everyone was racing to get their corn in before the next weather system rolled through. That night, I clocked in at 8 p.m. Dale was heading out, and he told me we had about 6 or 7 loads expected before morning. Should be steady but not slammed, he said. Call me if the auger jams up again. Then he was gone, and I was alone. The grain elevator sat about a quarter mile off the main road, surrounded by cornfields on 3 sides. Behind the building was the biggest field, maybe 80 acres belonging to Old Man Garrett. To the left was the Johnson farm to Tim. He right was state land that got leased out every year. During the day, you could see for miles. At night, with just the floodlights on the loading dock, everything past 50 feet was just darkness and corn stalks. The building itself was 3 stories tall, made of corrugated metal, with the grain storage silos rising up another 40 feet. There was an observation platform at the top you could climb to if you needed to check the auger line or do maintenance on the roof vents. The first few hours were normal. I unloaded 2 trucks from the Johnson farm, swept up the corn kernels that spilled on the concrete pad, and ate the sandwich I'd brought from home. Around 11 o'clock, I heard a diesel engine coming up the access road. It was Garrett's old Ford, loaded down with corn, the bed sitting low on the suspension. Garrett was 70-something, still farming the same land his grandfather had cleared. He backed up to the loading dock, and I walked out to hook up the auger. That's when I noticed he looked nervous. He kept glancing back at his truck bed, then at the cornfield behind the elevator. His hands were shaking a little when he handed me the delivery slip. "You working alone tonight, Marcus?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Just me till 6 a.m. He chewed his lip, looking past me at the building. "You got a phone on you?" "Yeah, in my pocket." "Keep it on you." He looked at the cornfield again. "Don't go walking in the corn rows tonight, boy. Something's been in my fields. Killed 3 of my dogs this week. Found them all torn up, dragged halfway across the field. Ain't no coyote neither. Coyotes don't hunt like that." I nodded, trying to look respectful. Farmers always had stories like this. Coyotes getting the chickens, black bears knocking over trash cans, somebody's cousin seeing a mountain lion that turned out to be a big house cat. Every year, same stories. "I'll stay inside, Mr. Garrett. Don't worry." He didn't look convinced, but he didn't say anything else. I turned on the auger and unloaded his corn. Took about 20 minutes. The whole time he stood by his truck, watching that cornfield. When the truck bed was empty, he got in fast and drove off without saying goodbye. I went back inside and started sweeping. That's when I heard it. Something was moving through the cornfield behind the elevator. Not wind. There wasn't any wind that night. This was something pushing through the dried stalks. Step, drag, like someone walking with a bad limp. But the rhythm was wrong, too steady, too deliberate, and it was getting closer to the building. I put down the broom and walked to the loading dock. We had a big flashlight mounted on the wall for checking truck beds at night. I grabbed it and shined it toward the cornfield. The beam cut through the darkness, lighting up the corn stalks about 60 feet out. The movement stopped. Complete silence. Like whatever was out there knew I was watching and decided to freeze. I stood there for a full minute listening. Nothing. Not even crickets. I went back inside and turned my music up louder, trying to focus on work. But I kept thinking about what Garrett said. 3 dead dogs, torn up, dragged across the field. 20 minutes later, I heard it again. Closer this time, right at the edge of the corn, maybe 30 feet from the building. Step, drag, step, drag. I grabbed the flashlight and went back out. This time, when I shined the light, I saw the corn stalks moving, parting. Something was standing there just inside the tree line, and it wasn't moving away. It was tall, maybe 7 feet. In the flashlight beam, I could see it was the wrong shape. Too thin. The limbs were too long. It stood there, completely still, and I got the feeling it was looking at me, even though I couldn't see a face. "Who's there?" I yelled. My voice cracked a little. The thing took 1 step forward, into the light. I saw it clearly for about 3 seconds. That's all I needed. The body weight, thin, almost skeleton thin, covered in gray-brown skin that looked like dried leather. The arms hung down past its knees, ending in hands with too many fingers. The legs were wrong. One looked normal, but the other was twisted, dragging behind when it walked. And the head. Jesus Christ, the head. It was too long, stretched out with no visible eyes. Just smooth skin where eyes should be. The mouth was too wide, going almost ear to ear, and when it opened, I saw rows of teeth like broken glass. It made a sound, not a growl or a scream. A wet clicking, like someone cracking bones with their teeth. Click, 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 click. I ran inside and slammed the metal door. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely turn the deadbolt. I pulled out my phone and called Dale. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice thick with sleep. "What?" "Dale, there's something outside. In the cornfield. I saw it. It's not human, Dale. I don't know what it is." "Marcus, stop screwing around. There's nothing in the corn." Finish your shift and stop wasting my time with prank calls. I'm not. He hung up. I stood there in the dark, breathing hard, trying to think. I turned off all the interior lights so I could see outside without being visible. Then I went to the window and looked out at the loading dock. The thing was standing in the open now, about 40 feet from the building. It was turning its head from side to side, and the head rotated too far, almost 180 degrees, like an owl. It was sniffing the air. I realized it was tracking me by smell, not sight. It didn't have eyes. It didn't need them. I watched it for maybe 5 minutes. It just stood there, that head rotating back and forth, the clicking sound constant and wet. Then I saw headlights coming up the access road. Another farmer with a corn load. The thing saw the lights too. It turned and walked back into the corn, moving fast despite the dragging leg. By the time the truck pulled up, it was gone. I went out to help unload. The farmer was a younger guy named Pete, maybe 30. I thought about telling him what I saw, but I knew how it would sound. Like I was drunk or high or making up stories to get out of work. So I kept my mouth shut and ran the auger. While the corn was flowing, I noticed something in the dirt near the field. Drag marks. Long, deep furrows in the soil, like something heavy had been pulled from the corn to the tree line. The marks were fresh. You could see where they cut through the thin layer of frost that had formed on the ground. Pete left, and I was alone again. That's when I heard the clicking from 3 directions. North side, east side, behind the building. Multiple sources, different rhythms, but the same wet, bone-cracking sound. They were surrounding me. I understood with cold, absolute certainty that there was more than one of these things. They were coordinating, working together, and I was trapped here until my shift ended at 6 a.m. 6 more hours. I couldn't stay on the ground floor. If they got inside, I'd have nowhere to run. So I grabbed the flashlight and climbed the maintenance ladder inside the building, going up to the observation platform at the top of the grain elevator. It was a metal platform with railings about 50 feet up, with a view across all the cornfields. I could see for half a mile in every direction when the moon was bright enough. What I saw made my stomach drop. The corn was moving in dozens of places. Things were walking through it, all converging on the elevator. I counted the movement patterns. 15 separate trails through the corn, all heading toward me, all with that same step-drag rhythm. Some were close, within 100 feet. Others were farther out, but coming steadily. My phone had no signal up here. Too much metal in the structure. I was stuck on this platform with no way to call for help. I could hear them now, gathering at the base of the elevator. The clicking was constant, overlapping, coming from Al. All around the building. Something scraped against the metal walls. Long, dragging sounds like they were testing for a way in. The door was locked, but these things were strong. I'd seen how that first one moved. If they really wanted in, I didn't think a deadbolt would stop them. Hours passed. I sat on the platform, freezing, watching the corn. At 3 a.m., I saw something that made everything make horrible sense. 2 of the things came out of the cornfield, dragging something between them. It was a cow, or it used to be. The body was torn open, ribs exposed, the back legs missing. They dragged it right underneath my platform and started feeding. I could hear everything, the wet tearing sounds as they pulled meat from the bones, the cracking when they broke the ribs apart. That constant clicking, eager and hungry. They fed for almost an hour, and more of them came to join. I counted 8 of them down there, crouched around the cow's body, ripping it apart with their hands and teeth. I thought about what Garrett said, 3 dead dogs, and other farmers had reported missing calves over the past month. Stories about coyotes and black bears. But it wasn't coyotes, it was these things. They'd been hunting the farms for weeks, taking livestock, hiding in the corn during the day, coming out at night when the fields were empty and quiet. At 5 a.m., the sky started getting lighter in the east. The things stopped feeding. They grabbed what was left of the cow and dragged it back into the corn, moving fast, gone before the sun came up. I watched them disappear into the stalks, spreading out in different directions, and then there was silence. I waited until 5:30, until the sky was definitely getting bright before I climbed down. My legs were so stiff I almost fell off the ladder. When I got to the ground, I looked outside. The area around the elevator was covered in tracks. Footprints that were human-shaped but too long with too many toe impressions. 6 toes on each foot, maybe 7. The prints were everywhere, overlapping, circling the building. In the dirt where they'd fed, there was blood and bone fragments, but the cow's body was gone, dragged back into the corn. My replacement showed up at 6 a.m. His name was Kyle, a guy about my age who worked day shift. He came in drinking a Monster energy drink, looking half asleep. "How was it?" he asked. I tried to tell him. I pointed at the tracks, the blood, the drag marks. I told him about the things in the corn, about what I saw feeding under the platform. He looked at me like I was crazy. "Dude, night shift always makes people see weird stuff," he said, laughing. "You probably saw some deer, maybe a black bear. Those aren't deer tracks. I gotta start my shift, man. You should go home and sleep." I left. I didn't even change out of my work clothes. I got in my car and drove straight to Dale's house. He answered the door in his bathrobe, pissed off that I was there. I told him I was quitting. He asked why, and I said family emergency. He said I was being dramatic and I'd lose my last paycheck if I didn't work a 2-week notice. I said I didn't care. I left. 2 weeks later, I was living with my cousin in Lexington working at a warehouse when I saw the news. A hunter found unusual remains in the cornfields near Moorhead. Animal bones arranged in patterns, stripped completely clean. Wildlife officials said it was probably coyotes, but they closed the area to hunting. The news report didn't explain why the bones were arranged, didn't say what the pattern was, just said the area was closed, pending investigation. I kept working at the warehouse, nowhere near cornfields. But I had nightmares every night about that clicking sound, about the way that first thing's head rotated, sniffing the air, tracking me by smell, about the sound of them feeding under the platform, tearing meat, breaking bones. 3 months later, my friend Derek texted me from Moorhead. They found more bones. Human this time. Hunter from Ohio who went missing in October. I looked up the article. The hunter's name was Michael Patterson, 62 years old. He'd been bow hunting near Garrett's farm on October 25th and never came home. They found his remains 3 months later, scattered across half an acre of harvested cornfield. The article said he was killed by animals, but it didn't specify what kind. It just said, unusual circumstances under investigation. I knew what killed him, knew it was still out there in the corn, and I wondered how many of those things were in the fields across Kentucky. How many farms had them? How many farmers had seen them and kept quiet, not wanting people to think they were crazy? I started researching online, found scattered reports going back decades. Farmers in Illinois reporting tall figures in cornfields at night. Livestock killed in Missouri, bodies torn apart and arranged in circles. Hunters vanishing in Iowa during harvest season. Most of the reports came from late September through November, when the corn was tall and dry and provided perfect cover. Most got dismissed as black bears or mentally ill homeless people. But I knew better now. I knew what walked the corn rows at night. I found one account from 1952, a farmer's journal that the Historical Society had digitized. The farmer's name was William Cross, and he wrote about something identical to what I saw. He called them gray devils with dragging legs. He wrote that they hunted in packs, took livestock, and sometimes took men. He wrote that burning the cornfields after harvest was the only way to keep them moving, to prevent them from settling in one area. But modern farming doesn't burn fields anymore, hasn't for decades. Environmental regulations, air quality concerns. The fields just get tilled under and the stubble stays there all winter, which means the things can stay can nest, can multiply. A year after I quit the grain elevator, I was working night shift at the Lexington warehouse when I heard something outside the loading dock. That step drags, pattern on the concrete, that wet clicking in the darkness beyond the floodlights. I stood there frozen, listening. The clicking moved along the edge of the building, just past where the light reached. Testing, searching. I understood with sinking horror that the corn was never the problem. It was just cover, just convenience. These things hunt wherever it's dark enough and isolated enough, wherever people work alone at night in buildings surrounded by empty space. I heard it circle the building twice before it left. I still work there, still take night shift because the pay is better. But I never go outside alone anymore. Never take the trash out after sunset. Never check the motion sensors when they trigger. Because once you've seen them, they know your smell. They remember your fear, and they always come back to finish what they started in the corn. My name is Jesse Crawford, and I've been working as a surveyor's assistant for Kentstone Construction for 2 years now. It's not glamorous work. Mostly I drive around eastern Kentucky with a laser distance finder and a camera, measuring old structures for potential development projects. Before this, I spent 3 years doing land surveys for the highway department, so I know my way around GPS equipment and topographic mapping. I've measured everything from collapsed bridges to abandoned factories, always alone, always just documenting what's there. But what happened last April in Perry County changed everything I thought I knew about the places we mark on maps and seal away. Some things don't stay buried, even when we pour concrete over them and post warning signs. The job seemed simple enough when my boss Gary handed me the assignment on a Tuesday morning. He needed photos and measurements of an old coal mine entrance up in the hills. Just the opening, nothing complicated. The mine had been closed since the 70s, and the records showed it was sealed with concrete, but a developer wanted current documentation before buying the land. Gary said it would take 2 hours maximum. I loaded my equipment in the truck, measuring tape, laser distance finder, my good camera, GPS unit, and a couple of flashlights because you never know. The drive took 40 minutes on increasingly bad roads until I found the site marker. The mine entrance was cut horizontally into a hillside, surrounded by rusted chain-link fence that leaned inward from decades of weather. The warning signs were faded but still readable. Danger, do not enter, and sealed by order of Camshaw, 1976. But someone had cut through the fence recently. The metal edges were still shiny where bolt cutters had snipped through, leaving a gap wide enough to walk through. That should have been my first red flag. I parked the truck and grabbed my camera. Fresh footprints marked the dirt path leading through the fence gap toward the mine entrance. They looked recent, maybe a day or two old, and there were several different boot treads. I figured it was probably teenagers exploring or maybe copper thieves looking for old wiring to strip out. Happens all the time with abandoned sites. The concrete seal that was supposed to block the entrance was gone. Just gone. Not broken or crumbled, completely removed, leaving the mine shaft open like a black mouth in the hillside. The opening was about 8 feet high and 12 feet wide, and I could see old rail tracks running along the floor, disappearing into darkness. The air coming out of the mine was cold and smelled like wet stone and rust. I wasn't supposed to go inside. My instructions were clear. Photograph the entrance, measure the opening dimensions, mark the GPS coordinates, and leave. But I couldn't help myself. I turned on my flashlight and shined it down the tunnel. The shaft ran straight back about 60 feet before angling downward. The walls were rough-cut stone, and the ceiling had wooden support beams that looked too old to be safe. My flashlight beam showed the minecart tracks continuing down the slope. Everything looked abandoned and empty. Then I heard something. It was faint at first, a rhythmic scraping sound like metal dragging on stone. It came from deep in the mine, echoing up through the tunnels. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Regular, like someone was digging or moving equipment. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed back weird, like the tunnel was longer than it looked. "Is someone down there?" The scraping stopped immediately. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. I stood there listening, my flashlight beam shaking slightly because my hands weren't as steady as I wanted them to be. I was about to leave when I heard something else. Whistling. Someone was whistling a tune I didn't recognize. Old-fashioned sounding, slow and sad. It was coming from deeper in the mine, and it was getting closer. I backed, away from the entrance. The whistling continued, echoing through the tunnel, and then I saw a light moving in the darkness. Not a flashlight beam. This was warm and flickering, like an old kerosene lantern. A figure emerged from the mine shaft. He was carrying the lantern in one hand, and he was dressed in mining clothes that looked like they came from a museum. Heavy canvas pants, a work shirt, suspenders, and a helmet with a mounted lamp that wasn't turned on. Coal dust covered him completely, turning his clothes gray-black. He looked at me and smiled. His teeth were black. His eyes caught the light wrong, reflecting like an animal's eyes in headlights. Too bright, too shiny. "You here for the shift?" he asked. His accent was thick, mountain dialect that I could barely understand. "We're short-handed today. Need diggers in the deep section." My mouth went dry. I'm surveying. For construction. I'm not working here." His smile faded. The lantern light made shadows dance across his face. "Nobody comes to the mine less they're working. That's the rule. Always been the rule." More lights appeared behind him. More lanterns. More figures in old mining gear, filing out of the tunnel. I counted at least a dozen of them, maybe more. They all had that same coal dust covering, those same wrong eyes. I ran. My boots slipped on the loose dirt as I scrambled back toward my truck. Behind me they were calling out, not chasing, just standing there at the mine entrance, their voices echoing across the hillside. "Come back! We got work! We always got work! Plenty of coal still down there!" I threw my equipment in the truck bed, started the engine, and drove away too fast for the bad road. In my rearview mirror, I could see them, all those figures standing outside the mine entrance with their lanterns, watching me leave. Back at the office, I told Gary there were people living in the mine. Squatters or something. He looked at me like I was crazy. "That's impossible," he said. "The mine's been sealed for decades." He pulled up the historical records on his computer and showed me. The mine was closed in 1974 after a collapse killed 17 miners. The entrance was sealed with concrete in 1976. The documents had photos. The concrete seal was 6 feet thick with rebar reinforcement. "I'm telling you, I saw people," I insisted. "I talked to one of them. I have photos." I pulled out my camera, but when I tried to review the images, every single photo of the mine entrance was corrupted. Just gray static, like the camera had malfunctioned. My hands shook as I scrolled through the blank files. Gary told me to go home and get some rest. I didn't argue. For 2 weeks, I tried to forget about it. I told myself I'd seen homeless people dressed in weird clothes, or maybe historical reenactors. But I couldn't explain the concrete seal being gone, or the corrupted photos, or those eyes that reflected light wrong. Then Gary assigned me to survey 3 more mine sites in the area, all from the same era, all owned by the same mining company that ran the first one. The second site had the chain link fence cut open too, and outside the entrance, sitting on the ground, were fresh lunch pails. Old-style metal pails like miners used in the 70s. They were open with half-eaten food inside that looked days old, not decades old. Beside them were work gloves and a mining helmet with a functioning lamp. This time I used my phone to take photos instead of my camera. The photos worked. I had proof. I spent that evening researching the mining company, Holloway Coal Corporation. They were notorious for safety violations. In 1974 alone, 3 different Holloway mines had fatal collapses. The 17 men who died in the first mine were never recovered. The collapse was as too extensive, and the company just sealed the mine with the bodies inside. I found newspaper articles from 1975. Families of the dead miners claimed to see their relatives near the mine. Entrances at night. The articles treated it like grief-induced hallucinations, but one quote from a widow made my blood run cold. "He can't leave. None of them can. They're still working their shift." Against every bit of common sense I had, I went back to the first mine that night. I parked 100 yards away and walked up with binoculars. It was almost midnight. The mine entrance should have been sealed with concrete. Instead, it was open, and there were lights inside. I watched through the binoculars as dozens of figures with lanterns came and went from the mine. They were carrying equipment, pushing ore carts on the old tracks, working like it was a normal shift at an active mine. I could hear machinery running, echoing out of the tunnel, rock drills, ventilation fans, the squeal of metal cartwheels. At exactly midnight, they all filed back into the mine, every single one. The lights disappeared. The sounds stopped. The entrance went dark. When dawn came, I walked up to the mine entrance. The concrete seal was intact, 6 feet of solid concrete with rebar, just like the historical photos showed. No cracks, no gaps, no way anyone could have gone in or out. But there were fresh coal dust footprints on the ground in front of the seal. I quit my job the next morning. Gary was furious. He threatened to withhold my last paycheck unless I completed the mine surveys, all 3 sites. I needed the money. My rent was due, so I agreed to do one more. The third mine was different. The entrance wasn't sealed, just a heavy metal door with a padlock. The padlock was broken, hanging open. The door was ajar, and I could hear machinery running inside, the rhythmic thump of rock drills echoing from deep underground. I pushed the door open. Modern LED work lights were strung along the tunnel ceiling, bright white light extending back as far as I could see. The tunnel was clean, recent, maintained, with fresh timber supports and proper ventilation piping. This was an active mine operation, but there was nobody there. I walked deeper, following the lights. I found working equipment, rock drills, ore carts, conveyor systems, all running but unmanned. I found a schedule board on the wall listing shift times and worker names. Every name on that board was from the 1974 accident victims list. A whistle blew, loud, piercing, echoing through the tunnels. I heard footsteps, dozens of them, coming from the deeper sections. I ran back toward the entrance as they emerged from side tunnels. Miners in modern safety gear, hard hats with LED lamps, reflective vests. But their faces were wrong, too pale, eyes too bright. "New worker," they called out. "Need to sign in, need to join the crew. We're always hiring. Plenty of work in the deep sections." I reached the entrance and slammed the metal door shut behind me. They pounded on it from inside, their voices muffled but persistent. "Can't leave during shift. That's against the rules." I called MSHA, the Mine Safety and Health Administration. I reported active illegal mining operations at all 3 sites. Inspectors went out within a week. They found nothing. All 3 mines were sealed or empty. No equipment, no signs of recent activity. They cited me for filing false reports. Gary fired me. I moved to Virginia, got a job at a hardware store in Roanoke, far from any old mining sites. 6 months later, I saw a news article online. 3 hikers disappeared near Perry County, last seen near abandoned mine sites. Search teams found their cars at different mine entrances. No trace of the hikers themselves. The searches were called off after 2 weeks. I know where they are. I know they're still underground, working the deep sections with the other miners who can't leave, who died on shift and never got to clock out. Sometimes, I dream. I'm back in those tunnels. I hear the whistle blowing. I know my shift is starting. I have to report to the deep section. I wake up sweating, with coal dust under my fingernails. I haven't been near a mine in 6 months, but I know it's just a matter of time before I hear that whistle for real. Before the thing in the mine hollow calls me back to finish what I started, to work the shift I owe. Because in Appalachia, the mountains don't forget their workers, and the deep places underground don't let go of anyone who's heard the machinery running and seen the lights in the tunnels. Eventually, everyone goes back to finish their shift in the dark. My name is Troy Chandler, and I've been a licensed electrician for 12 years now. Started as an apprentice right out of high school, worked my way up through residential, then commercial, and for the last 6 years, I've specialized in renovation work. Old buildings that need their guts ripped out and replaced. I've crawled through spaces most people don't even know exist in their buildings. Attics where the insulation hasn't been touched since the 1960s. Basements with electrical panels so old they still use fuses. Crawl spaces so tight you have to army crawl on your belly with nothing but a headlamp and your tools. I've seen rats the size of cats, dealt with black mold that could kill you, found dead animals in walls that had been rotting for months. None of it ever bothered me much. It's just part of the job. But what happened at Logan Elementary in West Virginia last spring changed everything I thought I knew about the spaces between walls and ceilings. Some places have things living in them that shouldn't be there, and some of those things used to be human. The job came through my usual contractor in March. Elementary school in Logan County, closed since 2015, sat empty for 8 years. Developer bought it cheap, planning to convert it into apartments. My job was straightforward: update all the electrical to code. The wiring was original, probably installed in the early 60s when the school was built. 3 floors, 40 classrooms, long hallways with those high ceilings they used to make in old schools. Most of the work would be in the ceiling crawl spaces, replacing knob and tube wiring that was a fire hazard waiting to happen. Pay was decent, $25 an hour, estimated 3 weeks of work. I needed it. My truck needed new tires and my daughter's birthday was coming up, so I took the job without thinking twice. The building was massive when I first saw it. Red brick, 3 stories, windows that went nearly floor to ceiling on each level. Inside, it still looked like a school. Lockers lining the hallways, bulletin boards with faded construction paper still pinned up, even some desks stacked in corners. The renovation crew was starting on the first floor, but I was assigned to begin at the top and work my way down. 3rd floor, west wing, 40-year-old electrical that needed complete replacement. The dropped ceilings were typical for old schools, acoustic tiles and metal frames, hiding all the infrastructure above. Ductwork, pipes, electrical conduits, all of it crammed into the space between the suspended ceiling and the actual roof structure. Some sections you could crouch in, others you had to crawl on your hands and knees or flat on your belly. I started on a Monday. Weather was cold, early spring in West Virginia. The building had no heat yet, so I wore layers. My setup was simple: remove a ceiling tile, climb up through the opening, navigate the crawl space with my headlamp, identify the old wiring, and start pulling it out to run new lines. The crawl space was tight, maybe 3 feet of clearance in most places, less where the ductwork ran low. Insulation everywhere, pink fiberglass that got in your clothes and made you itch. The air was stale, dusty, and cold. My headlamp threw weird shadows across the metal framework and old wooden beams. Second day, Tuesday morning, I was working above what used to be a 5th grade classroom. Moving through the ceiling space, pulling old wire, when I saw something that made me stop. A nest. But not a bird's nest. This thing was big, maybe 3 feet across, built into a corner where 2 duct runs met. Made from insulation that had been pulled apart and wadded together. Pieces of ceiling tile mixed in, and what looked like fabric, old clothing maybe, pressed into the mass. As I crawled closer, and that's when I smelled it. Rot. Death. Something that had been decomposing for a long time. Inside the nest were bones, small ones. Could have been rats, could have been cats. I didn't look too close, just backed out of there fast and climbed down into the classroom. The foreman's name was Rick. Big guy, mid-50s, been doing construction his whole life. I told him what I found. Probably raccoons, he said, not even looking up from his clipboard. They get into old buildings all the time, just work around it. I'll call pest control, have them come out next week. I wanted to argue, but I needed the money. So I went back up. That's when I started noticing the sounds. Scratching, sliding, movement in the ceiling spaces I hadn't reached yet. The acoustics were strange up there. Sounds echoed from weird directions, bounced off the ductwork and metal framing. But I could swear something was moving parallel to me, staying just ahead, just out of sight. I told myself it was raccoons. Rick said it was raccoons. Had to be raccoons. Thursday afternoon, I was working above the 2nd floor hallway. Long stretch of ceiling space, maybe 60 feet of crawl distance. I was halfway through when my headlamp caught something in the distance. Eyes, reflecting my light. 2 pale circles in the darkness, maybe 40 feet away. I froze. Hello? My voice sounded weird up there, flat and muffled. The eyes didn't blink, didn't move. If someone's up here, you need to come out. Building's not safe. I thought maybe it was a homeless person. Happened sometimes in abandoned buildings. The eyes disappeared. I crawled forward, heart pounding now. Where the eyes had been, I found another nest, bigger than the first one, and this nest had things in it that weren't animal bones. Shoes, children's sneakers, small ones, sized for maybe a 7 or 8-year-old. The style was old, from the 90s based on the design, and a backpack, rotted and covered in mold, the fabric falling apart when I touched it. I backed out so fast I scraped my shoulders on the metas. L-framing. Climbed down the ladder and went straight to Rick. "This isn't raccoons," I said. "There's kids' stuff up there. Shoes, a backpack. Something's wrong with this building." Rick looked annoyed. "Troy, this was a school. Kids lose stuff all the time. Probably got kicked up there years ago when they were doing maintenance." "Then explain the nests. Explain the bones. I'll have pest control here Monday. Until then, just finish the damn job." That afternoon, I was working in a corner classroom, standing on my ladder, reaching up into the ceiling with both hands, running new wire through the conduit. My arms were stretched above my head, and I couldn't see into the crawl space, just feeling my way through. That's when something touched my hand, not bumped into it, not brushed against it. Something wrapped around my wrist, deliberately. Fingers. I felt fingers, cold and thin and wrong. I jerked my hand back and nearly fell off the ladder, grabbed my flashlight and shined it up into the ceiling. Nothing. Just insulation and shadows. But my wrist burned. I looked down and saw scratches. 3 long, thin lines across my skin, red and angry looking. I climbed down, hands shaking. "I'm done," I said to Rick. "I quit. Find someone else." He offered me double pay. $50 an hour to finish just this floor. 1 more week. I needed the money. My truck was making a grinding noise. My daughter's birthday was in 10 days. My ex-wife was already on me about child support, so I said yes. But only during daylight, and only with another worker in the room below me, at all times. Friday morning, I went back up. The scratches on my wrist had scabbed over, but they still burned. I was working above the 3rd floor hallway when I found the marks on the ductwork. Scratches, deep gouges in the metal, like something with claws had been scraping at it. The scratches formed patterns. Groups of 5 like tally marks, the way you count days in prison, or the way you count when you're waiting for something and you've lost track of time. I counted them. Over 200 marks, scratched into the metal ductwork. I was taking photos with my phone when I heard breathing. Close, right next to me in the dark. My headlamp flickered. Once. Twice. Then went out completely. In the darkness, I heard something moving, sliding across the ceiling tiles. Too big to be a rat. Too quiet to be a person. A sliding, dragging sound, like something pulling itself along the metal framework. My headlamp came back on, and I saw it. Just for a second, maybe less. But I saw it. A figure, pale, pressed flat against the ceiling structure like it was part of the building. Arms too long, body too thin, face turned toward me, and the eyes. Those were the eyes I'd seen before, reflecting my light. A child's eyes. But wrong. Ancient and hungry and not quite human anymore. I screamed and scrambled backward, lost my grip, fell straight through a ceiling panel, dropped 8 feet, and hit the classroom floor hard enough to see stars. My ankle twisted under me with a crack that made my stomach turn. The other workers ran in, found me on the floor, ceiling tile and insulation raining down around me, babbling about something in the ceiling, something that touched me, something that wasn't human. Rick called a meeting, said they were bringing in a pest control company. Full inspection before any more electrical work. The pest control team showed up Monday with cameras and gear, spent 6 hours crawling through the ceiling spaces, found the nests, found the bones, found the scratches on the ductwork. Their official report said it was consistent with a large raccoon population. Building was clear for continued work, but one of the pest control guys, younger guy maybe 30 years old, pulled me aside in the parking lot. "We found something else up there," he said quietly. "Something that ain't in our report." He showed me a photo on his phone, the ceiling space above the old Appalachia, a section I hadn't reached yet. The photo showed a space that had been lived in, items arranged in neat rows, lunchboxes, all of them old, from different decades. Shoes, dozens of pairs, all children's sizes. Clothing, glasses, things collected over years, and scratched into the wall, deep gouges in the plaster. They left me here. There's stories about this school, the guy said. Kid went missing in 2003, 8 years old, disappeared during school hours. They searched the whole building, brought in dogs, FBI, everything. Never found him. Never even found a trace. That night I couldn't sleep. Looked up the case online. His name was Ethan Mills, 8 years old, 3rd grade. Last seen going to the bathroom during class. Never came back. The case file said security footage showed nothing. He just vanished. I thought about how kids explore, how they find ways into places they shouldn't be. How an 8-year-old might see a ceiling panel slightly moved and think he could climb up and hide. How easy it would be to get lost up there in the dark. How the ceiling space ran through the entire building, connected, a maze of ductwork and pipes and metal framing. How you could crawl and never find your way back down. How you could die up there, alone, in the dark, scratching marks on the metal to count the days, then the weeks, then losing track entirely. But that was 22 years ago, and what I saw in the ceiling was moving, was alive. The developer hired a specialized team. They spent 2 weeks clearing the entire ceiling space, pulled out 7 more nests, hundreds of bones, items belonging to at least 3 different missing children from the school's history, spanning back to the 1980s. But they didn't find any bodies, and they didn't find anything living. Their report said the building was clear. I quit anyway. Didn't matter what they paid me. Why? Didn't matter that I needed the money. A month later, I saw a news article. Construction workers at Logan Elementary reported strange sounds in the walls. One worker fell through a ceiling panel on the 2nd floor, said something pushed him. He had scratches on his back that got infected bad enough he needed antibiotics. He's suing the developer now. The renovation got put on hold. Building's been sitting empty again for 4 months. I drive past it sometimes. Can't help myself. Always look up at the 3rd floor windows. Last week I saw someone looking out. 3rd floor, west wing, right above where I'd been working. Pressed against the glass. Pale face. Too thin. But the building's locked. Been empty since they shut down construction. No one should be inside. I started researching missing children cases. Kids who vanished from schools in West Virginia, in Kentucky, in Pennsylvania. Dozens of them. Disappeared during school hours. Never found. How many of them climbed into ceiling spaces? How many got lost up there and died alone in the dark? And when you die like that, young and scared and abandoned, does something change? Do you become something else? Something that learns to live in the spaces between floors? Something that gets longer and thinner as the years pass, as your body adapts to crawling through ductwork and living in the dark? Something that survives on whatever climbs up into your space? Something that counts time with scratches on metal because you've been up there so long you've forgotten what days are? Something that still has a child's eyes but isn't human anymore? I have nightmares now, about being small and lost, about crawling through darkness that goes on forever, about hearing teachers calling my name from below but not being able to find the way down, about becoming something that isn't quite alive and isn't quite dead, about collecting shoes from the other children who never made it out. I know now that there are places where people go missing and nobody thinks to look up. Nobody checks the spaces between the floors and the seals, ings, the gaps in the walls, the crawl spaces that connect entire buildings. And some of those missing people are still there, still waiting in the dark, still scratching marks on the metal, still watching through the ceiling panels when workers come up with their headlamps and tools. Some of those workers fall, some get scratched, some refuse to ever go back up. I'm one of them. Because once you've seen what lives in the ceiling spaces, once you've felt it touch your hand in the dark, once you've seen its 2 long arms and 2 thin body pressed flat against the structure like it's part of the building itself, you know the truth. Buildings have their own ecology, their own hidden spaces, their own things that learn to live between the walls, and some of those things used to be children. I'll never forget that. Never stop checking ceilings wherever I work. Never stop wondering how many other buildings have their own watchers living in the spaces above, and whether they're all children who got lost, or whether some of them were never human at all. Just things that learn to hide in the places we build but never fully see. Waiting in the dark between the floors. Waiting for someone to climb up close enough to touch